everybody. This is Danny from Deep South Homestead. I wanted to continue something that I actually started on Porch Time. I noticed that in the Porch Time video, a lot of people was moved by that Porch Time. It seemed to strike a nerve, and it seems to be an area that people are having a lot of trouble in. So what I wanted to talk about tonight is dealing with your feelings. Now I know that's a subject that's kind of hard on a homestead, especially. There's a numerous amounts of feelings on a homestead. There's things that has to be dealt with on a daily basis on a homestead. There's joy when you see a new baby animal being born, whether it's rabbits or goats or chickens or whatever it is, cows or sheep, all these things being born. There's that time of joy. But then you'll notice when things don't go so well with an animal, and there's a lot of concern goes into that animal and a lot of work trying to make sure everything's okay. But then out of nowhere, it seems like the world falls apart and you lose an animal. Or a predator gets in, and a coyote, a fox, a coon, a possum, a hawk, any of these things, they get in and they get that newborn. And then there's a different change in the person's attitude, the emotions change. There's that element of sadness on a homestead that a person has to deal with. And not only that, there comes that time when animals, we like to use the term freezer camp. Animals have to go to freezer camp. You've given them the best life that they can have. That's not a joyful day, by no means, but you've given that animal the best life it can have. And there comes that time when it has to be harvested, because that was its intention from day one, was to be harvested. And that's never an easy day on a homestead. It's usually a sad day, but nevertheless, it happens, and it has to happen to be sustainable. And we have to get out of our heads that we're treating an animal like a human. And I know that sounds cruel to say that you're not supposed to, because the scripture says that a good man looks well to his flock. And God intends, if you have animals, He intends for you to look well toward those animals. So we see that there's an array of feelings that a person goes through on a homestead. Now, there's not just the dealing with animals and stuff like that. There's the feelings that people have to deal with when there's the joy when you get a new piece of equipment on a homestead, and it's a piece you've been wanting for a long time, whether it's a tractor or it's hand planters or maybe new tools, hose rakes, maybe you needed a new chop saw, whatever. You get all these things on the homestead that you need to be able to do the work on the homestead, maybe a new chainsaw or a new axe for busting wood or wood splitter, all these kind of different things. There's that time of joy for those things also. And then there comes that day when the thing that you bought, maybe you bought a new piece of equipment, and right after you bought it, it tears up. You got to send it back and you have it fixed, and then they bring it back to you, you use it, it breaks down, and you bought a new piece of equipment you paid a lot of money for, but it seems like it's staying in the shop more than it does on the farm. And then there comes that aggravation, then you begin to get angry, and you have to deal with something, and that's why you bought a new piece of equipment to start with, because you didn't want to have to deal with wore out stuff, and here you are having to deal with something that's just a lemon. And those are feelings and emotions that a person has to deal with on a homestead also. There is the feelings that a person deals with on a homestead, not only with animals and equipment, stuff like that. There is relationships on a homestead. I mean, there's a relationship between the parents and children. there are relationships between husbands and wives. A lot of people are single on a homestead, and if that's where God has you, then hey, that's great. But if you can't be single and you're married, that's great also. You know, what I mean, it all depends on your makeup as to where you're at on a homestead. Maybe you've lost a spouse like I have before, and you find yourself all alone on a homestead. Then there's a whole different array of feelings and emotions. There's that sense of when you go outside to do something, there's all those feelings of, well, me and my spouse used to do this, and then you're flooded with all these emotions that come back, and you try to find the good and the positive in all of it, but then there's always that element of sadness and loneliness, and then you miss them, and you have to sort through all these things. And then there's, I guess the English language is one of the poorest languages in the world as far as its ability to describe things. And after having done some study in Hebrew when I was learning it, I realized that the Hebrew people really had this thing down pat, as far as love is concerned. The Hebrew language has many words for love. When it's talking about the love between you and your Heavenly Father, it talks about an agape type of love, which is a different love than a love between a man and a woman, or between two friends, or between an animal and people. But it's a holy love. It's an agape love. And we see that there's the love of, some people pronounce it different ways. I'm going to pronounce it philia. It's a love that's shared amongst brethren. It's a brotherly love that's shared between people, and then you have the word eros. That word is it's an erotic love. It has a lot of deal with a lot of sexual passion, something that's shared between a husband and a wife only. And we see that that the Hebrews had lots and lots of different words that's shared between one another. There's the Hebrew word ahava. That's a deep, affectionate love that a person shares. And then there's the word y'all have to excuse me, my Hebrew, I haven't used it in so long, and I may not pronounce these words exactly right, but raya, R-A-Y-A, that's a love that's shared between companions, love that's shared between equals. So we see that the Hebrew people had many words to describe the different kinds of loves that they feel. And that's what I'm talking about here. When you're on a homestead, there's many types of loves that you will experience on a homestead. Your feelings will run rampant with you on a homestead if you're not careful. There's times of joy on a homestead. There's times of pleasure. There's times of feelings of success. There's times of sadness. There's times that you almost feel depressed on a homestead. And these guys are emotions that we have to be careful about, because a lot of times these emotions are based off of what we see other people doing, and we base our lives off of them. And there could be nothing further from the truth as far as what you should do. Because you see, your situation is unique to you as an individual on a homestead. You should never go on YouTube or anywhere else looking at a neighbor or whatever. You should never ever base your homestead or your feelings about how you're succeeding on your homestead on what someone else is doing, because your homestead is unique to you and to you only. Now, there are times on a homestead people get frustrated because they're not moving forward. There's times when people get frustrated. They get sad because it doesn't seem, they have a dream And there are those that perhaps have had a dream their whole life, from the time they was a young person until they're older now. And now they're sitting in a position where they're just be honest about it. They can't live that dream anymore because there's health reasons. There's just like there's physical reasons why they can't, age, and different things like that. And if they're not careful, that can set in and cause them some depression and some anger, some anxiety, as to why didn't I do this earlier in my life, or why did I wait, and all these type of there's just an array of different feelings. And guys, look, sometimes we just have to accept the fact things are what they are. We have to make the best of where we're at, and we have to move forward, as best as we can. Maybe you'll never own a homestead, but it doesn't mean you can't dream of owning one. You can still prep. When you go to the store, you instead of buying one can of something, you can buy 2 cans of something and put one in the shelf. And do that every time you go, and before long, your pantry will be full. And if something happens, some sort of life-changing event, then at least you'll have food. Or you can go to the farmer's market, or they have these big box stores that you can buy in bulk right now and stock up that way. If that's the best you can do, and you live in an apartment or whatever, guys, don't let it bother you that you're not where somebody else is with your homestead, because I've seen this now since I've been on YouTube a lot. I've seen people get upset with themselves because they are not where somebody else is on their homestead. And guys, you shouldn't do that. Remember, your homestead is unique for who you are. Now, there's nothing wrong with having dreams on your homestead or having short-term goals on your homestead. A lot of times, long-term goals never come to fruition simply because they're long-term. And I'm a prime example of that. When I first built my home here, me and Wanda talk about it quite often. There's on one of my walls over here, there's extra light switches that are wired in, but they go nowhere. And I told her, I said, well, when I built this house, I have a long sidewalk behind my house that I poured, and it goes out to a set of seating benches and by the chicken house. And some of those light switches was to light a pathway back there and to turn like a ceiling fan on under a little roof back there. And at night, you could go out and sit under it and enjoy yourself. And the lights was controlled from in the house here. So once you get back to the house, you'd have lights to see how to get in. And when you get in, you could turn them off. And then I had a dream of building a nice pond in here behind my house. And I had a walkway going out to the pond with a gazebo out on it. There's a switch for lighting that walkway and lighting the gazebo up from the house so you can see how to get out there in the dark. And see, these are long-term goals that have never come to fruition. Now, I don't know, will they ever? Only time will tell. But you know what? I had to deal with those feelings. When I wasn't able to accomplish the goals that I set. Maybe they were too high for what I set. And that's okay, because if you take a person's dreams away, you take their life away. And there's nothing wrong with dreaming. That's perfectly healthy. And 2, we have to understand our way with dealing with our feelings. A lot of it has to deal with what our temperaments are. Now, any of you who's ever studied basic life temperaments will understand there's 4 basic life temperaments. There's a phlegmatic, a choleric, a melancholic, and a sanguine. These are the 4 basic temperaments that's been figured out with mankind. Each one has its strengths and each one has its weaknesses. Now, you will predominantly have strength of one of these. You could have the makeup of all 4 simply because you have 4 grandparents. And each grandparent could have a strength that's opposite of each one of them, and leaving you with a little bit of each one of them. Now, there is no one person on the face of the earth that is any one particular temperament. You are a makeup of several of those temperaments, but one of them will usually shine forth in your life. If you're a choleric, you'll usually be kind of hot-headed and quick-tempered, something like that, but you'll be usually the kind of person that succeeds in business real easy. And if you're a phlegmatic, you'll be laid back and kind of a calm person. You don't want to be in the limelight. You'll always be in the background, but you'll be working, doing things, but you don't want to be recognized. And if you're a sanguine temperament, you'll be one of those that wants to just jump out there feet first. You don't pay any attention to what the consequences are. You just jump in, say, hey man, let's do this, and then you realize, whoa, there's a consequence afterwards, but you're always full of joy and usually the life of the party. And you might be a melancholic. If you're a melancholic, you'll have extreme highs, you'll be extreme lows. You'll be really happy at one moment, then you can be really sad because you fell off a cliff on the other side. Usually happens after a project's finished. But melancholics are usually said to be genius prone. In their moments of excitement and stuff, they usually accomplish a lot before they crash. So it depends on which one of those basic temperaments you are as to how you will run your homestead. Some homesteads don't run as smoothly as others, and it's just simply not your fault. It's just simply which one of those temperaments are you, because each temperament has strengths and weaknesses. And if you're one of those kind that, let's just use a phlegmatic, for instance. If you're a phlegmatic temperament, you usually will be the kind of person that's just likes to be stuck off back in the woods to yourself. You don't want anybody bothering you, and you're not going to bother anybody else. You'll be very successful in your homestead. Your homestead will probably have a lot of OCD moments on it, and you'll be able to, you'll be able to move in and get things done, and you won't really want anyone else to help you. You'll just basically want to do it all by yourself, and that's how you'll run your homestead. But but if you're a sanguine temperament on the other hand, and you run a homestead, you'll be like asking your friends, hey man, can you come over here and help me, man? I got this big project going on. You'll be all gung-ho and everything and jumping up and down, and I'm so excited. And your friends will come over and you'll all get involved in it. They'll go, man, why'd you call me over here? You ain't prepared to do anything. And you go, yeah, but I'm wanting to do it, and your homestead will always have a little project started that's never finished, but you'll be excited about it, and that'll be your type of homestead. So that's just two examples, guys. Depending on your temperament will depend on what kind of homestead you had and how you'll deal with your feelings on that homestead. I guess probably one of the more important ones that you'll want to deal with on your homestead is your relationship with your spouse if you're married. You want to be equally yoked. It's kind of difficult, and I know I get a lot of these comments, one spouse saying, well, my spouse is not on board with me, and man, I really feel for you. I've been there. I've been there before in the past. I'm not there now, thankfully. Wanda and I are like two peas out of a pod. We both gung-ho about our homestead. We both want to see it succeed. We both have the same desires, and that makes life so much easier when you got a good companion that's really on board with you. And I had that in my previous marriage, but my wife passed away, kind of left me here all by myself, and I didn't know if I'd ever have that again. But God was good, and He gave me another spouse, and who, to be honest, I believe she has more drive than my other spouse did. I believe she's wanting to be more of a homesteader than my previous wife did. So that was kind of exciting. God always, when you lose something that's very dear to your heart, a lot of times God always opens up the door and makes a way for you to have something that seems like maybe it's a little bit better and a little bit easier to deal with, and kind of fills that void in your heart. Helps you to deal with your feelings on a homestead just a little bit more when there's been a loss. But always be conscious of your spouse on the homestead. A lot of people give in to kids and stuff like that, and there's nothing wrong with having kids. There's nothing wrong with loving kids. I've got two that I love very dearly. Do anything in the world for them. But my affection to my wife comes first. And that's something I had to understand on a homestead, that my wife comes first. And that usually makes the homestead work a lot smoother when the husband and wife are usually on board together. Now, if you have kids on a homestead, then it is very important that you meet their needs also, because kids that grow up on homesteads, especially rural homesteads, a lot of times if they're not in a public school system or something, they lack a lot of companionship and social skills if they're not careful. So they really need to be involved with other homesteading kids. They need animals. I raised my kids with animals, and one of my daughters used to show dairy cows and stuff like that in the fairs and things, and she could handle them cows just as well as any grown man could. And so she got a real good taste of that, and it helped her to meet a lot of like-minded people. It was in that same field also, and today she's a very successful lady in her field of work. And so we see that it's always wise to look at your children, see where their feelings is at, see where their love is at. Maybe their love is not even in animals or anything in on a homestead. Maybe they're into photography. And if they are, then that's great, because hey, there's no better way to portray your homestead than through beautiful pictures, and encourage that child in photography. If that's the case, let them get out on the homestead. Let them go into the woods and hunt the animals and take pictures of wildlife and of your animals, and the care and the love that's shown toward animals. Maybe if you build something, they photograph it for you and put it in a memory book or something. Big family gatherings on a homestead, or fellow YouTubers meeting on homesteads, they take pictures and videos of these things. Always encourage your child, if that's where they're headed in their life. Hey, don't down them just because they don't want to fool with animals, or they don't want to buck the hay or whatever. Work with them. Work with their goals also, and help them to realize how to deal with the feelings that they feel on a homestead. So we see that homesteading has an array of different feelings that's involved with it. So guys, that's one of the reasons I wanted to come on and do this this video, is just simply because I got so many comments on my porch time the other day, and I saw a lot of hurt. I saw a lot of need. I saw a lot of those that were just gung-ho, and I saw those that were older and said, my health is broke down, but I'm going to keep on keeping on. And guys, look, that all goes back to whatever basic temperament you are as to how you'll handle things. I see a lot of those temperaments when I look at people. I studied a lot about it. I did it for business purposes when I was running businesses, but it allows me to help people today, because I'm usually able to see things in people that they themselves may not see a lot of times, and I'm able to maybe speak a word of encouragement to them, and maybe help them to understand why they have a particular problem in their life that they're not able to deal with. So I wanted to take this opportunity to come on and sit down and do this talk with you. I felt there was a need for it. It's extremely cold outside. There's not a lot of work going on. I spent the day today mainly helping a neighbor and blessing them. That it gives me joy when I can do that. I can bless a neighbor, because time is one of those things that you only have so much of, and if you give it to someone, you've given them part of your life. So keep that in mind whenever you're out about your daily business and a neighbor asks you for help. Be willing to share a little bit of your time with them, because that's one thing you can't get back. So guys, look, we've been on here long enough tonight, and I'm hoping that we'll be a blessing to somebody with this video. And thank y'all for watching, because we literally love each and every one of y'all that subscribe to us and watch our videos. Hey, it means a world of difference to us to know that there are people out there who care. So with that note, thank y'all from Deep South Homestead.